Alright, we're going to talk about rounding on this video, and we're going to start with a quick activity. The activity that I want to show you is pretend that we have a balloon and you're holding the balloon in your hands. So let me draw a hand real quick. Alright, and then we have a number that we need to round. So we have 1 and 32 hundredths. And the instructions are to round to the nearest tenth place. Okay, so the first thing that we need to notice is where is the tenth place in this decimal? Well, we notice that the 3 is right behind the decimal, and that is the place value for the tenths. So the 3 is in the tenth place. So we're going to locate, or we're going to pretend that the 3 is inside the balloon. Okay, follow me here so that you don't get lost. It's a quick activity, but it kind of serves as a really good visual aid to understand rounding. So now we're going to look at the number behind the balloon. So in this case, the 2, which is in the hundredths place. That 2 is going to tell us how we're going to count. And we're going to count to that number. We're going to count using our fingers. And we're going to use the hand that's holding onto the balloon. So if we're going to count to 2, our hand is going to now look like this, where we count 1 and 2. So we lift up one finger, we lift up another finger. Are we still holding onto the balloon? So it looks like we are. The balloon is not going anywhere, which means that the answer is going to stay the same. The 3 is going to stay the same. So the answer is just going to be 1 and 3 tenths, and the 2 just goes away because it told us to count to 2, and we did, so we're done with it. So the final answer is just 1 and 3 tenths. It's that easy. So now let's have an example where we have, let me close my hand again, where we have 1 and 75 hundredths, and we want to round it to the nearest tenths place. So again, we're going to pretend the 7 is inside the balloon because that's the number we're rounding to, the tenths place. And we're going to use the 5 to count. So the 5 is going to tell us count to this number with your fingers. So we're going to use the hand that's holding on to the balloon to count to 5. So now the hand will look something like this, where it's open and we're counting to 5. So we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when you open the hand, what do you think happens with the balloon? Well, you're right, it goes up. And if it goes up, now it's going to go up to the next number, which is an 8. So my final answer, after we get rid of the 5, because we already counted till 5 using our hands, is going to be 1 and 8 tenths. So that's a quick activity that we actually acted out in the classroom, but I wanted to draw it on here so you can kind of remember and have a quick visual effect of what rounding really means. So now I'm going to give you another way. So with same numbers, and this time I'm going to draw a hill, and I'm going to draw the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in this manner. Notice that the 5 is at the top of the hill, and the 0 begins on the left side of the hill, and we end with the 9. So now we're going to pretend that we have a little truck or a car at the beginning of the hill. And if we're going to round using this little hill method, we're going to say that the number that we want to round to, which is the 10th place in this case, in my first example would be a 3. So you notice that we start with a 3, and we might make it to the 4, we might go up to the 4 if we make it all the way up to the hill. But the second number, in this case, which is a 2, so the hundredths place, the number to the right of the number that we're rounding to, the tenths place, is going to tell us how far we're going to drive our truck or our car. In this case, we're going to drive it all the way up the hill to the number 2. So it's going to go up, and it's going to look something like this. That's where my truck ends up. Now, if I'm in that truck and I run out of gas, what's going to happen? I'm going to go back down, right? So in other words, when I round and I'm using this, there's no way I'm going to make it all the way up the hill if I run out of gas. So the 2 is not going to help us get up the hill. So that means that's not an option. So what that means is we're going to end up right back where we started, and my answer is going to be 1 and 3 tenths because the 2 didn't work. Okay, so this is another way of visualizing what's happening, how to round. Whichever one works best for you. You don't have to draw the hill, you don't have to draw the balloon every time. It's just choose whichever method you can grasp better, which method you can remember, you can understand better, and then use that one all the time because that's going to help you round. So my final answer is 1 3/10. So the second example, now I have a 7. So instead of putting a 3 and a 4 in my heel, I'm going to put a 7 and an 8 because it either stays a 7 or is going to go up to an 8. So here we go. My truck is going to drive all the way up to the hundredths place, which is the 5. So the 5 is right here on the top of my heel, and that means that my truck is going to end up at the very top of the hill like this. Now from this point forward, I can go down the hill or I can go back the hill. If I run out of gas, what's going to happen? Is it easier for me to keep going down the hill? Like if I just get out of my truck and push a little bit, it's going to be really easy. Or maybe because I have some speed built up already, it'll just take me down the hill with no gas. Or am I going to roll back? Well, it's not going to go back because we already reached the top. So it's going to be easier to go the other way. So in this case, the 5 told us that where to place our truck, and now we know that the truck is going to roll all the way downhill and it's going to make it to the 8. So my answer is going to be 1 8/10. Again, this is just little ways to remember how to round. So and we have one more. For those of you who like rhymings, songs, those of you who like to listen to songs and then you remember the lyrics really well right after you listen to like the first time, this is going to help you the best because that means you're an auditory learner. So if you remember this little saying, 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. And you use this to round, it also works. It's a good helper. So let's look at the 3 because we're going to round to the 10th place just like before. And that 3 right there is the number that we need to decide. Is it going to stay at 3 or is it going to go up to a 4? Well, the number 2 behind it is going to tell us what to do. So if you say that saying 5 or more, raise the score, 4 or less, let it rest, well, the 2 is less than 4. So what's going to happen with our number that we have circled is going to rest. It's going to stay the same. So that means that my answer is going to be 1 3/10. Now we're going to do the second number. So now we're looking at the 7. We're going to round to the 10th place. Is the 7 going to stay a 7 or am I going to round it up to an 8? Well, we're going to look at the 5 and we're going to say the same. 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. Well, in this case we have 5. If it's a 6 or a 7 or 8 or a 9, it's going to be or more, right? So either way, we would, in this case, raise the score. So the 7 would go up to an 8. And my final answer would be 1 8/10. So you have probably noticed that in every single way that we did it, we end up with the same answer over and over. Okay, so I just wanted to review that with you guys. So with the balloon, with the little heel, and then with the saying. Now we have some practice problems. So in this case, we need to pay attention to the directions. We want to round to the nearest whole number. So if we're thinking about like the balloon or the truck or whatever, we are going to be looking at the whole number, and that's the ones place. So I went ahead and circled all of my ones place, pretend that's the balloon. And if that's my balloon, that means that the number behind it is going to tell me how to count. So with my fingers, with my hand, I'm going to count to 3. Am I still holding on to the balloon? Yeah, so the balloon doesn't go anywhere, it stays the same. The 2, we want to keep the 2. And everything else goes away. So my final answer for this one is just the whole number 12. Remember, we're rounding to the nearest whole number, so every answer in these practice problems should be a whole number. Alright, the next number we have is a 60, and in the 10th place we have a 1. That means that the 0 stays the same, because if you count to 1, you just raise one finger in your hand, the balloon is not going anywhere, you're still holding on to the balloon. So, but everything else goes away, so my final answer is just 60. Same process for the next one. The 5, if you count to 5 with your fingers, your hand ends up being open all the way. So that means the balloon is going up. So in this case, everything goes away behind the whole number, but we have to raise that number from a 6 to a 7. So for our final answer is 37. The next problem we have is a 6. That's going to tell us what to do. We're going to count to 6. Well, you don't have 6 fingers in your hand, but if you count to 5 already, your hand opens all the way, and then you put another finger up, well, the balloon already went up. So what's going to happen with that 9 is going to raise up to a 10. But we can't just put 9 and 10. It's not going to be 910. If the original number is 99, we're going to go up one more number, which is going to give us 100. Now we have 8 tenths in the next problem. Again, if you count to 8 with one hand, you're going to end up opening your hand. The balloon goes up. Everything else behind it goes away. So it's not going to be 124. It's now going to be 125. And then the final one here in these problems, we have a 2. So the 2 means you count to 2 with your fingers, and that means the balloon stays the same. It doesn't go anywhere. Everything else goes away behind the decimal point in this case, and my final answer is just 237. Okay? The next set of problems, we round into the nearest tenths place. So now we have to identify the tenths place. In the first problem, we have the 2 in the tenths place. The next problem, we have an 8. The next problem, we have a 4 in the tenths place. Then we have a 3 in the tenths place, then a 1 in the tenths place, and a 9 in the tenths place. So the hundredths place is going to tell me what to do. So we have a 3 here. The balloon stays the same. We count to 3 with our fingers. Everything else goes away behind the balloon. So my final answer is 45 and 2/10. It's that easy. The next problem that we have a 3 at the back of the balloon. So the count to 3, balloon stays the same. Everything goes away behind the balloon, and the answer is 923 and 3/10. Same process for the other ones. We have a 9 in this case. The balloon is going to go up this time because we count to 9 with our fingers. Everything behind the balloon goes away, and my final answer is 70 and 9/10 because the 8 goes up to the 9. The next one is a 5. So yeah, if you count to 5, you open your hand, the balloon goes up, and everything else goes away after the balloon. So you have 23 and 2/10. The next one is a 5. So again, you count to 5, open up your hand, the balloon rises, and that means we have to go up one number in the tenths place. Instead of a 4, now we have a 5. And finally, the last one in this set of problems, we have a 9. So the 9 is going to tell us that the balloon raises or goes up. Everything else goes away after the balloon, and my answer is 101. Now be very careful in this one because notice that we're rounded to the tenths place, and if we round it to the tenths place, we must have a number in the tenths place, just like every one of these other answer choices. We have a number after the decimal. So in this answer, we have to have something in the tenths place. So you probably guessed it by now, we have to put a decimal, and the only number we can fill in there has to be 0. So that's my answer for that one. And then the final practice problems that we have for this video is these. And this time we're rounding to the hundredths place. So I'm identifying the hundredths place by circling them. In other words, those are my balloons. And now I'm going to check 5. And I want to say the little saying so I can kind of vary my instruction. So 5 or more, raise the score. So the 4 goes up and everything else goes away. So it's going to be 67 and 5/100. Now we have the next number, which is a 3 behind the balloon. So in this case, it's going to say 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. So because we have a 3, we're going to let it rest. It's 4 or less. And that means that everything else after the balloon goes away. So my answer is 302 and 74/100. And finally, we have these other ones here. The 8 is 5 or more, so we raise the score. And here's my answer. The 1 has to go up to a 2. And now we have a 4, so 4 or less, let it rest. So the 9 stays the same. And everything else goes away. So it's 51 and 9/100. And now we have a 2 behind the 9, which means it's less than 4. So 4 or less, let it rest. The 9 stays the same. Everything else goes away. And my answer is 32 and 9/100. And finally, we have a 6. And if it's 5 or more, we raise the score. So that means the 5 goes up to the next number. Everything else goes away. So my answer is 392 and 46/100. And that's it. That's how you round. If you need any more help, please rewatch this video as many times as you need to. Pause it, rewind it, watch it again, whatever you need to do to master rounding. Thank you for watching.